Welcome back. We're discussing US-Iranian relations in the wake of the recent face-to-face meeting between the two sides in Geneva. I'm joined by New York Times columnist Roger Cohen and Iranian political scientist Kaveh Afrasiabi. Let's start our second half of this show with Kaveh Afrasiabi. We heard there Roger Cohen talk about Iran's nuclear ambiguity. Do you believe that this is a question of trust, that the West cannot actually believe Iran when it says that it's pursuing this nuclear program for civilian purposes? Is some kind of confidence building measure needed here?
The deficit of trust, and it's actually mutual in light of a history of reneged contracts and discriminatory behavior toward Iran on the nuclear issue by a host of Western and Eastern nations. Russia today is on the verge of being delinquent on its delivery of its promise of operationalizing the Bushehr power plant. The U.S. reneged on its contract with Iran to deliver the nuclear fuel rods for its research reactor in Tehran, and the list goes on. With respect to nuclear ambiguity, let's not forget that all of Iran's enrichment activities are fully monitored by the UN's atomic agency, IAEA, which has cameras in place, and its safeguard mechanisms ensure the world that if there is any diversion to non-peaceful, i.e. military purposes, it would be easily detected. And this latest news from Iran, its proposal to hand over a bulk of its enriched uranium for further enrichment for its medical reactor, is another confidence builder, because first of all, it reminds the world that Iran has had access to relatively highly enriched uranium and never misused that. And secondly, that it problematizes this whole issue of Iran's nuclear intention, because after all, Iran has extensive civil nuclear needs in light of its growing population, etc. Something that the U.S. officials many years ago acceded and agreed to that, but now they sing a different tune. Now, I think that we need confidence building, but it's a two-way process. Right now, Iran looks at its request for enriched uranium from France and perhaps Russia as a litmus test of international community living up to its own obligations under the non-proliferation regime to assist the developing nations such as Iran to advance its civilian nuclear technology. So in case the talks fail, and I really question the issue of failure or success here, because the benchmarks are not really clear. And if we're talking about ambiguity, this is the central issue about the U.S. What is its benchmark for success in the nuclear talks? Because there was a time when they were talking about zero centrifuges, then limited centrifuges, and then President Obama in his speech in Prague a couple of months ago hinted that U.S. is ready to acknowledge Iran's nuclear program, including the fuel cycle, as long as they are fully monitored by the IAEA. And I really sincerely believe that Iran is willing to give further objective guarantees and provide all kinds of assurances that its program is indeed peaceful. So the talks that are coming in the next few weeks and so forth should focus on transparency and confidence building and so forth, and stay away from the poisonous environment that we have seen mushroom since the October 1 Geneva talks.
Okay, let's go to the phones right now. We have a caller from the United Kingdom. Habib, go ahead with your question.
Hello. My question is to the presenter of the both side in New York and the Iranian, is that I am suspecting, I'm a law student in London, and I've been following these events of Iran enrichment nuclear program for a very long time, for more than a year now. And what I am suspecting is that the bottom line is that the United States is expecting Iran to give up or be clear about this nuclear program. But what I am suspecting is that Iran will not give up and would not give for as long as the United States of America does not do something about Israel, because Israel is always threatening Iran with some sort of military action. With respect, there's a brutal relationship that Iran, there's a culture clash, there's a religious clash between Iran and Israel and the United States.
Okay, so Habib, let me put your question to Roger Cohen. Roger Cohen, you have written that it's time for Western nations to give up the idea of zero enrichment. That's not going to happen. The caller there raising the position of whether the United States wants Iran to give up its nuclear program completely.
Well, Kaveh raised the point too, and I think that the genie's out the bottle. You know, so long as Iran can reassure the world that its program is transparent and is purely and exclusively for civilian nuclear purposes, as it says, then I personally believe it should have the right to enrich on its soil. Now, how much enrichment there is, where, how many sites, all that to be determined. But obviously all this within an IAEA framework and within the framework of IAEA monitoring. It would be an absolute disaster, in my view, if Iran were placed in a position where it said, okay, well, to heck with this, we're leaving the IAEA and we're going to pursue whatever program we want to pursue in a clandestine manner. That is not the outcome we want. With respect to Israel, I do think we're seeing some subtle shifts from the Obama administration, and indeed Foreign Minister Mottaki of Iran did remark on this. It wasn't particularly widely noted, but in a UN vote on a motion calling for a nuclear-free Middle East the other day, the Obama administration abstained. And this was a shift from prior votes saying no to such an idea because of its tacit endorsement of the fact that Israel is nuclear armed. So I do think we're seeing some shifts and some moves from the Obama administration that it is pursuing a more balanced policy in the Middle East. And I think that does lay some groundwork for potential progress. It's going to be extremely difficult. You cannot overestimate the amount of mistrust that exists between the United States and Iran. I mean, this goes back, the U.S. role in the coup that overthrew Mossadegh in 1953, the hostage-taking, the U.S. shooting down the Iran Air jet. There have been so many painful incidents in the histories of the two countries. And I'm all for small gestures. I mean, once this gets going, if it does, let's look at things like visas. Can we open up visa policy? I saw a Boeing executive the other day. He was pretty keen to sell some parts to Iran so these planes can stop falling out the sky. Well, that seems like a pretty decent starting gesture. There are all kinds of things that could be done.
Okay, I just want to continue with the Israeli issue. We received an email here from Omar Dana, and he writes, the Obama administration has not mentioned a single word about Israel's secret weapons of mass destruction. Double standards like this will lead to more violence in the Middle East and will not help in facilitating any future agreements with the Iranians. Israel is putting all of its efforts to prevent any agreement and encourage the US to give the green light for a war on Iran. Kaveh Afrasiabi, let me ask you to address that issue. We heard Roger Cohen there say that it's changing.
Well, you know, now that Mr. Obama is a Nobel Peace recipient, maybe he can act more energetically toward these lofty objectives of a Middle East nuclear-free zone and, you know, Middle East peace, etc. And I believe that if the approach is right and if the U.S. Makes a cognitive house cleaning from this old Cold War language which was applied toward Iran by the Bush era and so forth, then there's possibility for constructive engagement as well as cooperation with Iran on a number of regional issues and so forth because of the pool of shared or parallel interests between Iran and the United States. The prerequisite for that, however, is, as you said, a great deal of confidence buildings, and I agree with Roger that perhaps starting by small steps, baby steps, is more appropriate instead of having these grandiose ambitions of a grand bargain and so forth. Maybe that's the ultimate objective, but we need to build incrementally to get there. And right now there's a great deal of distrust, and I think that this kind of Manichaean enemy image of Iran that we see reflected in Secretary Clinton's speech just yesterday referring to Iran's evolving threat and so forth, is really counterproductive. And I much prefer the kind of persuasive diplomacy that President Obama himself
Mr.
has
Afrasiabi,
put forth.
thank you very much. I'm going to have to end it there. We've run out of time. Thanks to you and Roger Cohen for being with us, and thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, after 18 years of negotiations between the Palestinians and Israelis, is there any hope for a two-state solution? Should both sides be considering one binational state as a viable option? We'll speak to Palestinians on both sides of the debate. Make sure to tune in for that. We'll see you the next time.